All right. Welcome to my Zoom. Welcome to another one, anatomy study live here. So hopefully you guys are doing all right. Let me check. Mike, you guys hear me fine? Can you get a thumbs up? Someone, please. I got some new stuff set up today. I got this blue light in the back. uh, oh, thank you. I got this blue light in the back. I got rearranged some of the setup here for you guys, so you're gonna be able to see the references, the chat. Trying some new stuff. This whole streaming thing is new for me, but it's fun. Figuring things out as we go. Um, so for this week, I released a video this Monday on sculpting on the iPad. Just a quick tutorial for people wanting to get into ZBrush for the iPad. So check it out if you haven't checked that yet. It's very basic stuff, but hopefully that's a good introduction for those who haven't started yet. Um, I'll be releasing another video next Monday about primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. I recorded that during the weekend, so really cool breakdown into how I look at forms and do some of those things. There's much more content coming down the line, recording some podcasts, some other things, masterclass tutorials, lots of fun stuff coming down the road, but let's just keep one thing at a time. But today we're gonna be continuing that study that we started last week. So it's 6 p.m. sharp. How is everybody doing? Good night. Hey, what's up? Will you get Gio on your stream sometime? Yeah, I'll definitely bring Gio if he's down for it. I think he will be down. I'll bring Gio and then we can both stream and chat and sculpt together. I love to do that. We did a live sculpting session many years ago on VR. That was super fun. All right. Folks tricking in. Cool. Glad to see everybody is doing well. Hello. All right, so I guess we can just jump on it and get going. Let's see if this new setup will work. So let me go to my desktop. Hopefully you guys see the chat on the left side. This is my peer ref here at the top. So we're gonna be, looking at all of those details. So looks like that is working fine. And I got the chat, got the new square with the blue light. Check this out, playing with the contrast between cold and hot. warm, I should say warm, not hot. Cool, right on. So let's just jump into ZBrush. So this is where we stopped last time, and I was looking at this after the stream, and the only change that I did, to be very honest with you all, let me just save this as a different file so we can keep this. Well, the only change I actually did since last time, I just made the legs a tiny longer. I felt like after the stream, the legs were a little bit on the shorter side. It might still feel a little bit short depending on the angle, but overall, I think this is looking okay. I think this is looking solid. So today, what I have planned, obviously we need to refine everything and continue looking at the whole, but I thought about doing what, the masters in the past used to call giornata. So it's basically, now that we have a whole composition, we can select areas such as the arm and then really focus on the arm and kind of get this, just focus here and get this piece done, right? So This is a very common approach to work on large pieces, large compositions, large sculptures, and whatnot. You block the whole, and then you jump into small sections, and then you kind of finish that off, and then you finish it off another section, and all of that. Because we have already the whole kind of somewhat established, I'm thinking that we can do like one pass in the head, we can do one pass on each arm, maybe one pass in the torso, and then the legs and the feet and all of that, right? So I like doing this approach because it helps me to zoom in after I have the whole somewhat defined. The other approach would be to just do everything at once. The same way we built this, we can continually doing passes on the overall piece as layers, and let it progressing. Depending on the model and depending on my mood, I guess I kind of approach this differently. But today, I think because of the sort of lecture that we're doing here, right? Like, or this sort of uh, approach where I want to show you how I work, and it's a little bit more like easier to digest the information if we just focus on a couple sections. So I'm gonna probably, maybe for today, look on a section like this and see how far we can get, and then we can, maybe we do more, maybe we do less. Let's see how it goes. But I think this feels like a good area to tackle today, something like this. So does that sound right? You guys hear me fine? Just a quick check before we really jump into some fun action here. All right. Hey, what's up, Tadeo? Good to see you, man. Antonio. Oh, nice, nice, nice. Right on. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. All right. Cool. So, all right. So let me just jump back to my pure ref here, and let's see. And as we stated previously, right? Like my pose is not identical to the reference, right? Like like you can see, like this actually bending to the left a little bit. If we look from the back, the tilt is a little bit less. So there is a little bit of things that we can continue working on the movement and on and on the pose. Um, but I guess we can there is a little bit of movement here, so we can continue working on all of those things. But anyways, let's just start like refining some of these things. So today I'm gonna go a little bit more about into the actual anatomy structure, starting with, let's see, uh, starting with this rib cage here, and then here I'm just gonna try to look into the more flatter shape, not thinking exactly about muscle per se. And I'm gonna start cleaning things up, right? Like last week was very kind of gestural, and today's gonna be a little bit more refined. So I'm gonna be smoothing things out a little bit more today, really trying to think about more like structures, giving a little bit more definition to some of these things. Let's see. So some of this may be a little bit intuitive to me. Some of that I may struggle a little bit, and that's how it usually goes. I saw someone said, "Hey, art is feels easy." Honestly, it never feels easy to me, and I do know some people that tends to find doing some of these things somewhat like on an easier side. To me, to be very honest, it always felt very hard. I have this fun story when I was, in the beginning of my career, I took a bunch of classes, and I was by far the worst student of all of the classes. And this is not an exaggeration. Like this is actually reality, I was struggling so much. And I think that that's my upbringing, like that's all of the references that I had at that time. And the time that I put into practicing growing up, I never done too much art growing up, so that didn't help. So anyway, so let's just blocking some of these things. I'm not gonna go into really uh doing the exact shape of the abs or anything like that. Just still keeping things somewhat loose here, so we can continue evaluating the whole of this piece, the whole of this section, right? Giving us liberty to make mistakes. And then here, I think we can really reinforce. We have the rib cage here going this way. And then I see a dip in the reference rally because this is somewhat getting compressed here. So I want to emphasize that poking. Although in the actual reference, this is the opposite. So it's not lift. He's kind of, compressed this way here, but I don't mind manipulating a little bit of the reference just to make this area a little bit more interesting. So, continuing refining some of these forms, cleaning up some of that early mass that we built, making sure we are not losing all of that gesture. So here, I want to continue looking into here. If you guys have any questions along the way too, feel free to just kind of, let me know. As usual, I will stop in a little bit and maybe look at the chat. But yeah, I like that how some of this is starting to feel a little bit cleaner. And again, just focusing on more simpler structures. Don't need to get too crazy. Yet. You can see I do a lot of cross hatching to fill up forms because it helps me to kind of get rounder forms and cleaner forms. And again, I might be exaggerating some of these muscles, and it's totally fine, right? Like there is no real need to match the reference 100%. In fact, I may actually want to manipulate a little bit of the reference just to make things a little bit more interesting. So another way of doing this is to actually dissect all of these muscles, and then it becomes a sort of like a different type of study. Yeah, this is nice. I like how this is getting, stretched. Let's see the reference if there's actually, yeah, there you go. So this is much more exaggerated in my piece, but I like it. It gives a little bit of movement. I'm just fill it up a little bit more here. You can see these guys and the obliques here. Very clear definition in some of these guys here. Just indicating some of that. Making sure things are not too crazy. And also, I don't want to spend all of my time on this side, right? Like I want to, kind of move around the piece. Let's just make sure like there is enough volume here. So let me just look at this shoulder area a little bit more. So I have a little bit of the movement, the volume here on the chest. I don't want this to be like a very, clean line, very inorganic, robotic. So let's just remember that there is, skin and fat and muscle and all of those things here. Let's emphasize a little bit more of the bone structure here. I've been playing with building a couple different materials too, so this material here kind of helps me to see some of these forms. Let's see. Let's continue cleaning things up. All right, that's good. Yeah, I like, some of these big lines here. I think I really want to capture those. So this guy is going this way. And then, using a little bit of what I know and a little bit of what I see. I think, who says that? I think Jeff Watts. Love his videos, love his work. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's the one that always says something like, part of what you see, part of what you know, and part of what you wish you saw. Something along those lines. But the idea that you are mixing the knowledge that you have with what you see in the reference, and kind of combining with your own design or your own sensibility, right? So that's the part that you wish you saw, which is maybe things that are not very clear, but you like that aspect of either the anatomy or the design, or like composing some of those shapes. And I do a lot of that, right? Like maybe like I don't really see a lot of what I'm doing here. I see some indications of some of these things, but I believe that through multiple studies from different type of references that I've used throughout my life, I can see that adding some of these forms here may be interesting. One thing at a time. Let's continue building here. Because this arm is a little bit so he's kind of lifting the right arm, like it's a little bit more to the side. It's not like pull back as much, so we can pull this volume forward a little bit more. And I have a somewhat of a flatter, more kind of a fuller shape here. The stuff that we did last week was fun and very gestural, but we could continue working in that more sort of like sketch look. But for this type of studies, I like to separate things out and then eventually clean things up, so we can really think about these shapes and kind of have a little bit more definition in some of the shapes and forms that we are building. It helps us to really think about what we are doing, because then there is very little kind of guessing, I guess, which can be good as well, depending on what you're doing. A lot of those somewhat happy accidents, which we all do all the time, and I tend to rely a lot on that when I'm doing other types of work, maybe more design oriented things. Anyway, so I'm rambling a lot. Let's just continue going here. All right, so this is kind of looking okay. I think I lost a little bit of of the form here. So, let's just take advantage of digital sculpting and just kind of move things down a little bit more. Let's just kind of clean it up a little bit. For some of these cleanup of large masses, I like doing the shift approach. So basically you hold shift, you click, and then you release shift. And then I like going with like some of a circular motion, very, very slowly. And I'm not going very strong with the smoothing here. With the smoothing, I'm kind of going somewhat subtle, so I can maintain some of the strokes and maybe some of the information that could get lost if we just kind of clean up the surface all at once. All right, so continue indicating some of these things here. All right, this is starting to look okay. You can see how we are cleaning things up here compared to everything else. So let's just keep going. Let me just save this real quick. Let's just keep building, keep going. I think I want to indicate a little bit of the nipples because they really kind of help solidify, maybe not really define, but just help solidify some of the structure of the chest. So this guy is a little bit more here. Yeah, there you go. Starts to feel a little bit more organic. We can go with smaller brushes and start to really refine some of this structure. Maybe I'll do this in a little bit. Let me just not get hang up on, because this is the stuff that I really enjoy doing. So let me just kind of continue going and building, other areas first. All right, let me just kind of clean things up a little bit without losing too much. But yeah, this is coming along, and just what I mentioned before, right? Like the having a little bit of contrast here and there really helps to kind of solidify this whole area. I don't like how some of these lower abs here are shaped. So let me just clean it up a little bit more. So I think this is just missing, the overarching shape of the muscles, which is, there's a little bit of a belly here in the middle, and then it kind of goes in and out, and then it goes out again. So some of that was getting a little bit lost. Yeah, there you go. Let's just kind of indicate a little bit of the belly button. This feels much better. Yeah, it's looking much better. Yeah, I like where this is headed. So let's take a look at the chat to see if you guys have any questions or any thoughts. Hold on. All right. Is it going to be continue until full completion or rendering small forms? So I don't know. Let's see. Let's see how far we get today, and if we want to do more sessions with this whole piece, or maybe we jump on something else. I feel like doing some creatures, honestly, but I wanted to do this, continue this today. But maybe the next one we can give this a hold, put this a pause, and maybe design a creature or work on a creature. I have some ideas for Christmas as well that I want to try. I'll be on Monster Palooza next year, so I need to start working on some pieces too. So maybe that could be a possibility of designing something here with you guys. Let's see. All right. This is Yeah, there you go. There you go. So what's the most important way to define the anatomy and get everything look very natural without losing the structure, but also making sure it doesn't look like an accuracy at the same time? That's a really good question. I think this comes with practice. And obviously, like if you look at the video that I'm going to be posting next Monday, it's about primary forms, secondary forms, tertiary forms, and how I blend all of those things together. But in a nutshell, I'm basically doing a lot of that all at once here. Um, but if we look at an area like this, you need to think about the underlying structure, the muscles, the bones, find ways of indicating everything, and still remember there is skin on top. And a lot of the looks that we call écorché looks, they don't have personality, right? Like so, for example, if you look at how I'm kind of breaking down some of these abs, uh, well, a couple things, right? Like the way I'm breaking down these abs, I'm not going and really drawing everything like this. Although it could be a one way of getting there, right? Like there is no shame or no problems in doing approach like this and then filling it up the gaps. And I know a lot of people that actually work this way, and I think it's totally fine. But leaving the model like this, right? Like then it starts to become a little bit over the top, and you are not balancing out, all of the different ideas, the different concepts in hierarchy in forms. Secondly, there is a skin on top of everything, right? So remembering that there is, so let's say like you have something like this, remember that there is a skin kind of going on top of the form and maybe filling up some of these gaps and respecting hierarchy, which means primary forms, secondary forms are subordinated, and tertiary forms are subordinated to to the higher structures. Uh, it is the key thing to still maintain structure and be able to add details. So you can see here that if let's say if I want to add a little bit of a skin here, maybe a little bit of a bump here, these things are subordinated to the structures that are underneath, so they are not overriding the original forms. So the best thing to do all of this is just to sculpt a lot and to use a lot of reference, and to look at real human reference as we are doing here, but at the same time look at écorché models, right? Like so you can see in the écorché, these abs will be like this, right? So they are like this. So one ab, and then you have another ab here, and then you have another one here, right? Like if I do this, it's gonna doesn't look natural. It doesn't look realistic. It doesn't look organic enough. In this case here, you're gonna see that a lot of, like, some folks actually have these ribs poking through. Some people have like these abs a little bit sitting on top. So it's the cartilage right here, right? So there is a lot of like nuance and difference between different people, and I think starting to focus on capturing these differences, that's what makes these things a little bit more believable. And to be honest, it's very hard to do that by heart without reference. So that's why it's important to use different references, work from live models. Uh, uh, Now that we have, iPad, I think this is gonna really open up a lot of possibilities for live classes where we have a live model posing, and we do some sculpting. Before you had to have a notebook or like a very special computer, whatever. But now with the iPad, I'm really looking forward to doing some sessions like this here in US, maybe abroad too. But I think this could be very, very interesting. So imagine doing what we're doing here, but live in a class with a live model, right? Like that would be dope. And we could go into the model, look at this, see how everything moves, and you know, I think there's something to be said about that. And again, with the iPad, I'm not sponsored by ZBrush by any means, but I'm just excited with the whole iPad thing. Uh, let's see. I hope that helps. Um, a I was going hard surface. Not really. I don't think hard surface is really my thing. I also don't. Well, armor. Like armor sets or accessories. That kind of stuff. Sure, I like doing those, but uh, but Hard surface per se, I've done a couple of things, but it's not really my forte. For getting the first job, is it more important to know deeply fundamentals in ZBrush or to have knowledge or different softwares and steps of the video game pipeline, or maybe both? So that's a tricky one. I don't want to keep doing this, but I'm actually recording a video on that. I have half of the video recorded already, kind of how to break into the industry, that sort of thing. But the idea is, if you're getting into video games, you need to understand the video game pipeline, right? Like maybe not as advanced as a senior artist would do, but you need to, be able to at least understand the basics of how characters for video games are made. If you're getting into statues and collectibles, maybe that is not as relevant, right? But the, just sculpting, just doing ZBrush, and just doing the very basic stuff, it is a really good first step, but it will be very, very hard to compete with that without having all of the remaining things, right? Like the market's very competitive right now, so I would recommend, playing a little bit with Unreal as well, and doing a little bit of, you know the the homework, if you will, right? Like if and I'll go more in details into why I think all of those things in a video soon, but hopefully that makes sense. um so you can do the whole sculpture without the smooth, and that's kind of what we talked about last week. Although, like, you can just kind of subdivide the forms more and more and more until they are very, very, very small. And depending on the piece, I actually do that. I may actually do this moving forward. After this point, I may go back and just kind of start smoothing less and less and less. But I do like the combination of adding things, and then, cleaning up some of these edges. But you can see there is still volume there, and I leave some of these marks. So my process, and many other folks do, include smoothing, but in a very precise way, if that makes sense. But ultimately, I'm just trying to clean up some of this mess, right? Like, another concept that I really enjoy is organization of chaos. So basically, this is very chaotic right now, and I need to really define, some of the scapula here, some of the trapezius, like some of these muscles are very chaotic right now, and gesturally they are fine. But once I start getting into each one of these individual areas, I need to visually have this a little bit cleaner for me, so I can actually understand what I'm looking at. So for myself, I need to, depending on the piece and depending on the subject, I may need to do less or more. But depending on the approach, and depending on the subject, depending on, the goal with whatever you're trying to do, it might be fine to do the piece completely, like I'm doing here, for example, without smoothing anything. And I think different processes gives you different results, and they are all valid. Um, it really depends on what you're building. I could do something like this. Uh, I personally, for certain pieces, I don't enjoy the kind of noisy, kind of crunchy look that some of these things give me. I do prefer having a little bit of like a cleanup form, which I can kind of do some cross hatching on top, right? So I can do some buildup of some of these secondary forms, tertiary forms, but having a somewhat of a more cleaner underlying structure. Stuff like this, to me, for the look that I'm going for today, tends to be a little bit more natural, if you will. And then I selectively pick what I want to highlight, which requires a somewhat more cleaner surface underneath. But not to say that this is not interesting, right? There are many ways of making this interesting, to the point that this was very, very sketchy, and I thought that was, becoming interesting if I could just kept going in that way. I think it depends on the visuals and the results you're going for. Well, very long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps. It'd be awesome to watch you doing the same study, but in traditional sculpt. I actually think about doing that. I just need to change the setup a little bit. But I've been discussing with a lot of friends that we want to get back into traditional sculpting. I have some friends starting to learn how to sculpt traditionally, playing with clay, and I've been, thinking about getting back into it. It's been a couple of years since I've done something in clay. So who knows? Maybe we do something here live together. Only if you guys participate and do some live sculpting as well. Right on, right on. Let's see. Thank you, thank you. Love these studies without symmetry. Yeah, these studies without symmetry are very, very fun, and they really open your eyes to, they really help you break away from the idea of perfection. I think symmetry it's something that holds you back a little bit, especially in digital sculpting, because you are always used to this idea that you are in full control of everything that is happening. When in reality, some of these things, it's actually good that you are not in control. And it actually gives you more natural results when you let things happen, if that makes sense. Um, right on. Hey, what's up, everybody? All the new folks joining. Cool. All right, let's keep going. So, all right, so this is, getting to an okay state. We can continue refining this, but let's just go back to some of these references here. Just want to do another pass on some of these very high level proportions here. Maybe this. Finding a little bit more of like flatter areas, so it's not like everything is just round and full. Yeah, breaking a little bit of some of that, making a little bit more natural. Let's go to the other side. Yeah. All right, so this side here, we're gonna go into the back a little bit, but let me just try to, get a little bit more of like this gesture going here. So we have, remember last week I was just going with the very gestural and kind of, not going too crazy about anatomy. And we're gonna see here that some of the folds in the back, like here, for example, they are more gestural than actually, muscle definition and all of that. But there is muscle below the skin and the fat pads and all of that, right? So I think it's important to think about everything. I've read once, I don't remember who said it or where I read it. I think it was in a Russian anatomy book. Yeah, I'm almost certain it was the anatomy Russian. Yeah, I don't remember, but basically the idea that anatomy, as many other tools, you study enough that. So the goal with studying that very much is to be able to forget about all of that. So maybe let's just rephrase it to you study enough that it becomes intuitive for you, and then you don't have to think about anatomy. And in fact, you don't even want to be thinking about anatomy at all times, because otherwise you start bringing a lot of these how do you call it, standards or presets into everything you do, and then everything starts to become very, very samey. And I had that problem for many years, where I just spent a lot of time just doing anatomy without looking at real references. And a lot of my models and my pieces, they were becoming very accurate to, to a certain degree, but they didn't have a lot of design qualities, and they felt very samey. So it almost like I memorize a recipe, and maybe it was part of my journey, but but then I had to find ways of breaking away. So here, for example, I know like the muscles that are below here, right? Like, but I'm much more interested in going after what I see in the reference, and not only what I see in the reference, but I also, how can I think that this piece here is kind of compressing, the skin, and maybe is there anything else that I can be doing here to make this a little bit more interesting? Finding that balance between all of those things, and that happens when I'm, doing stuff like this, studies like that, or it happens when I'm um, designing creatures and whatnot. So it's the play between the real stuff with the opportunities that we have here to make this a little bit more interesting, right? Uh, all of that. So this is starting to look okay. You can see in the reference, this is actually pulling down, so we can actually try to mimic that. So we can kind of force some of that being pulled down here. And then, maybe getting this. So getting that movement, that sense of movement down. It's gonna help us with the movement here. And then imagine like the skin getting compressed here. And again, I'm not doing this, right? Like, oh, the scapula is here, and you have this. Again, this is great, and you need to do that. And I've done a lot of that. In this case here, that's not what I'm going for. And I may have to go that way again in the future because you get rusty. But like I said, I'm in this phase of my life, and I keep repeating myself, right? But I'm in this phase that I think I'm a little bit more interested in learning how to manipulate form and design shapes and making believable choices more than accurate anatomy. Although, obviously the accurate anatomy, it's a key component here for me, especially when I named this video anatomy studies, which we are doing anyways. So again, this big mass here, the rib cage, right? Like it's tilting back. So I want to make sure we are framing this pinching here correctly. And then looking at the reference, we don't clearly see all of these things, right? But we do get a sense of what's going on there. And because he's really pinching his back this way, we can emphasize some of these other masses here getting pinched as well. Let me just kind of clean it up and kind of bring his underwear or his Speedo a little bit more clarity. Again, going to the other concept of organization and kind of cleaning up what we see. So not only the viewer, but also ourselves, we can understand what we are seeing. Let me just save this real quick again. Let's see, take a look at the chat. Let's see. Yes, generic. Thanks, Mike. Hey, Gustavo. Thanks, man. I'll send you this material. This is something that I've been experimenting, a material that I, modify, and then I'm changing some colors, edited, the matte cap and whatnot. If you like this, I can send this to everybody. So, for free or whatever. So let me know if you guys want that too, and I can just put that in my website for you guys to grab. But yeah, it's something that I'm experimenting. It has some like lighter cavities or whatnot. and I love the purple. I've been doing this purple thing for quite some time. For those of you who watch my, not watch, but who saw my anatomy book and my anatomy studies stuff, for some reason, maybe because of Monster Clay from the beginning, which used to be, well, not used to be, still uh, this sort of like purplish color, and I also feel like it's somewhat rare to see purple in ZBrush. So that also helps me with the sense of this is, my work, I guess. Uh, Anyways, I can keep rambling on all of this forever. Will you bring female anatomy? Yeah, we can do another one on female anatomy eventually. Like I said, probably the next stream. If we don't continue this one, we'll see how far we get today. But if we don't continue this one, we'll probably be on something else, maybe a creature or a different type of character. I like doing anatomy studies, but I also want to do other things. Been painting a lot lately too, for those of you who follow me on Instagram. So someone asked me yesterday or earlier today, can you do a live session painting? Maybe eventually, once I become decent with it, but definitely not right now because I'm still learning. But yeah, I definitely want to do more of these sessions with you guys. I still want to do another portfolio review, maybe before the end of the year. I felt was that one that we did, the first one, was very, very nice. I got a lot of messages, not only from the folks that we ended up looking at the portfolio, but also from different people saying that they learned a ton from that review. So that was awesome to hear. So it really, encouraged me to do more of those things. So every time you guys see something like that, please let me know, because then, it's a good indication that things that it is helpful for you guys, right? Still trying to figure it out, the whole community thing on how we can interact more. People suggested Discord. The reality is that I already have a Discord, but it's so high maintenance. There's a lot of people on that Discord already, and it's full of bots, and it's very hard to maintain. And I have a full-time job, and so I couldn't really maintain that. So I want to find different ways. So for now, we are using that Instagram art hub that I created to kind of be able to interact a little bit, more privately. But eventually, I want to be able to find different ways of interacting and building community and whatnot. Oh, one thing that I meant to mention today is that I'm gonna be starting a challenge. It's gonna be. I said it's gonna be a year long, but I rethought about that. So I'll share more details soon. But it's gonna be a 3 months art challenge, and we're gonna go with a new team every week. So it's gonna be 12 weeks, starting in the second week of January, if I'm not mistaken. I need to check my calendar. But the idea is we're gonna pick a team or something to study, and we all have a 1 week to complete or to do a study. And we're gonna go into 3 month cycles. So let's do 3 months first, and then see how it goes. And then we do another 3 months, right? And the idea is that we can all learn from each other. We can all explore different ideas, and hopefully, and it's not very taxing, right? It's just like a sketch in a whole week. So it's not like one of those draw every single day for 365 days. Like I tried doing one of those. I think I lasted 7 months. Life gets in the way. There's a lot of stuff that happens if you're trying to commit to something like that every week. But so, like I said, if it's just gonna be 3 months once a week, the commitment it's much lower, so the rate of success it's much higher for all of us. So hopefully you guys will participate on that too. And you know, like I said, more information coming soon. All right, so I clean up some of these things, and some of that actually ended up losing a lot of this information, right? So let's just go back to the reference, and this is a much better view. So first things first, like my arm, my scapula here is in a slightly different position, so I need to take that into account. But basically, uh, yeah, my both of my scapulas are in different positions. My arms are much more compressed in the back, but that's fine. Let's just think about some of these gestures here. So, you know, there's the whole of the scapula here. Let's just kind of break that down here a little bit more. Uh, and then because he's leaning this way, all of this mass is kind of a little bit heavier on this side. So we can use that to kind of help indicate form. And this side here, it's a little bit more, it's rounding out this way. So let's just kind of clean up. And again, going after the very big brush strokes, big shapes first. Let's just kind of go back a little here, and then, you know, we got this guy here in this corner, kind of going this way. We can bring a little bit more space to this edge here, this corner. And then find a little bit more, you know, get that wedge shape here instead of that round compress, which it's not very accurate to our reference. So more of the wedge shape here, and then you got the seventh friend over there. Then we can, you know, keep some of these things still gestural. Don't tie things too, like, don't tie things up too fast, because then it becomes very hard to correct mistakes. So whenever I find very complicated areas like this back here that it's not very obvious, like, you know, it's not very easy to just draw everything, I like to tackle things a little bit slower, right? Like, so I'm kind of indicating the big masses, and then I slowly figure it out how to solve some of these problems, right? And you can see like my shoulders here are a little bit different. And then let's just kind of go over this mass here. And, you know, we could be going over all of the muscles and, you know, naming everything here, but I'm trying to stay a little bit more disconnected to that. Like I said 100 times already in this slide, I'm trying to train my eyes to kind of don't fall into the generic baseline stuff that I've built over the years. So it gives me more of a sense of analyzing the reference and kind of reconstructing things. And but obviously I'm using all of my studies of anatomy, and you know, this is all of that's still built into what I'm seeing. All right. All right, this is the structure here is a little bit better on this side. Cool, that's good. It's gonna define some of these forms a little bit more. All right, this is good. It's feeling more natural. All right, so boa, Boninha. All right, hey, what's up? Could you tell us a little bit about when you took a year and a half to study and focus on your portfolio? Could you talk a little bit about what took into consideration when making this decision, a little bit about your small goals throughout this process. Well, actually, I never done that. Took a whole year and a half to study and focus on portfolio. So what happened was I came to US in 2000. Well, I came multiple times, but I was in Brazil and I came, over the years multiple times. But in 2013, I came and I visited a bunch of studios. At that time, I was running my own school and atelier in Brazil, just on traditional sculpture. I was working with makeup effects and whatnot. And long story short, I ended up visiting a bunch of video game studios. And I saw the opportunity to, build a portfolio and, get into the video game industry for real. So then at that time, I came back to Brazil and then I closed everything down and I gave myself a whole year. But in reality, it took me like 7 months to put a portfolio together and get hired. But like I said, at that time, I already had like 9 years of experience of working with characters, building models and sculpting and all of that. So I don't want to give the false hope or false impression that like I got a job in just a 7-8 months of portfolio. It was, everything compound to that point. But yeah, that moment in my life, I knew what kind of pieces I wanted to make because I had very specific targets of what I wanted to do. So I said, hey, I'm gonna do 2, 3, 4 different pieces, fully fleshed out characters. So what I thought about that time was, let me just try to mimic if I'm working at a video game studio. I don't know exactly how that is because at that time I had only worked in advertisement, film and some other different things. I never had actually worked at a studio, video game studio. So, but I guess I had a good idea of what it could be like. So then I found a couple concepts online and then I somewhat tried to mimic that process by myself. And that's how I approach. So I'm like, well, this is a task that I got, and let's say if I need to build these characters, imagine that I'm, getting this art review by my seniors and whatnot, and that's kind of how I approach. So I'm gonna do one character, and then I'm gonna move on to the next task, and so that was my goal. But I'm not sure if that it's good advice. Overall, I think thinking like the idea of pretending that you are at the game studio and like putting all of that in your head, I think it's really cool exercise to do when you're doing personal work. So basically making your personal work very seriously and somewhat thinking that it's almost like a professional gig. I think that helps a ton. All right, so let's just keep going. So this guy here, again, I don't want to be overly drawing these things. Just kind of continuing. Thinking about planes. All right, let's just keep going. So now I need to bring a little bit more of the anatomy to kind of help me solve what I'm seeing here. So you got the scapula here, the bone, and then we got this guy here, and there's this shape here, and then it goes down. Okay. And then again, I'm somewhat exaggerating some of these things a little bit and manipulating, making some choices to possibly make some of what I see a little bit more interesting, and also addressing that my pose is not identical, right? So trying to also make sense of of not only what the reference looks like, but also what my model looks like. Some of these areas, these angles are starting to look cool. I want to keep working in 3D, like 3D meaning overlapping of forms. So one way that we could do this is just kind of create a little mask here. And then I definitely want to make sure this is kind of going out a little bit more. And then here, this is going in a little bit more. So we have that overlap to help with, yeah, there you go, to help a little bit with the volume. Maybe this is a little bit exaggerated, so we can just kind of fill it up a little bit. And then continuing playing with, some of these folds and, just the skin kind of drooping over on top of this anatomy. Yeah, there you go. This is starting to look cool. Let's just kind of do another pass here with the whole mask thing, because I want to move some of these masses a little bit more to the side, give a little bit of a pinch here, a little bit more. And, making some of these shapes a little bit more interesting. And doubling down on some of these accidents here, which, not full accidents, but I'm not really copying one-to-one, right? Like I'm getting a sense of, this is what, the feeling and the movement of what I see in the reference here. And I'm kind of bringing that over here. So if we bring this back, all right, so that's kind of looking cool. Let's just see the chat a little bit more. All right. Have you thought about traditional sculpting live streaming? Yes, I mentioned this previously, but yeah, I will think about, setting things up so we can actually do a session like that. Is it digital painting? No, this is digital sculpting. It's a software called ZBrush. Is it possible to visit some video game studios if you are in LA? I heard it somewhere, and I don't know if it's true. Yeah, if you gotta know somebody to invite you to take tours to the studio. Most studios are not open to the public, so you gotta schedule in advance. So, but there are ways to visit if you know folks in the industry. Yes, I learned a lot from with the portfolio reviews. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely do more. So if you want to get selected and picked, just join that community on Instagram, because that's how I'm communicating with folks. And previously, and for my last session, I basically just posted like a little poll, and people just dropped their work, and I ended up selecting from there. So I'll probably do the same again. How can we make exaggeration look natural in 3D? It depends on what you're exaggerating, but usually it's between understanding what makes something look natural to begin with, and once you understand that, you can start manipulating and playing with those conceptual ideas. Uh, I know this isn't the point of this live, but I'm very curious about this. A friend and I watched the GDC lecture on Callisto several times. The eyes are amazing. I couldn't understand exactly how the two extra meshes above the eyelids work. I understand that one more oily and the other more reflective, but adding the reflection from the sphere, doesn't it cause any problems with refraction? That's a good question. Maybe I should do another extra session on that. Maybe I can invite Jorge and Martin to come here with me, and maybe we can just kind of go over some of that. But it's hard to just say that in words. But no, that's the quick answer. Um, And how did you guys come to this conclusion about the extra meshes? Oh, it was a lot of research and a lot of experimentation and a lot of physics involved in studying and testing and trying. Uh, uh, nice. Let's go. Let's go. Hey, what's up, Vicky? Yeah. Was it hard to move from traditional to digital, or was it very natural? So I actually started my career in 2004 with digital. So, and then eventually I moved to traditional, and I never kept touch of the digital stuff. But then eventually I decided to fully migrate to traditional to digital. Sorry, but it was not like a full leap out of the blue, right? So, like I said, I already had previous experience with digital, and uh, my first introduction to sculpting as a whole was digitally. But then after like a year or so, I jumped into traditional, and because at that time I look at all of my heroes and like stuff, people like Rick Baker and all of those guys, like the movie Stan Winston, all of those guys that I admire, they were all traditional sculptors. So, and they were starting to do digital work, um, and I was like, well, maybe I need to learn how to do this thing, and then but they ended up developing a whole passion for traditional arts, and I still do to this date. I have a very deep passion for getting my hands dirty and working with my hands, not sitting in front of a computer and all of that, right? That's why I've been mostly painting with oils in my free time. Besides doing this live session, last night I was painting, and I've been painting almost every night since. Just learning a lot about painting recently, and having a really good time learning a new medium, learning new techniques, studying with folks I admire, going to New York in January, taking a class at GCA. So, I love being a student. It gives me a fresh perspective on what is like when you are trying to learn something, but also the environment of teaching and learning is just something that I always loved. Uh, so I love teaching, and I love learning, and I love taking classes, and I've been taking multiple classes throughout the years from different subjects. A couple years, like last year, I took two C++ classes. Uh, I've taken shader classes, Python classes, rigging classes. uh, I truly enjoy drawing classes, painting classes, sculpting classes, uh, chess classes. I it's like a true thing. I really just enjoy learning, and uh, yeah. So this is not very obvious in the reference, but adding a little bit of some extra stuff here. What's up, Chris? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we started this today, continuing what we did from last week. Just going over. Yeah, this is coming along. Happy with how this is developing. Let's see. You can see how different that is. Let me just go back to this white material, just to kind of get a break from the purple haze stuff. So yeah, I think this is starting to look nice. Still somewhat loose in some areas, but that's fine. Not sure if I really want to get super tight. Definitely want to get that academic, sort of realistic study impression, that's much more than just the anatomy itself. There is the gesture, you know, the treatment, the subtleness, the the selection of shapes, the design, the curating of what we see and what we want to show, the balancing between interesting ideas versus trying to indicate everything you see, you know, all of that. Um, yeah, so this is starting to look cool. Maybe we can work a little bit on the arm. Let's see, maybe this arm here would be nice. Or shall we do the head? I don't know. Maybe we can do a pass on this arm real quick. Or maybe this arm here, just to kind of get a little bit more of this. Yeah, maybe let's just do this here. This is a little bit more straightforward, I guess. So this arm is a little bit simpler. Let's just kind of build up some of these volumes, you know, make sure this biceps is really feeling all stretched. And again, you can see how I'm cross hatching to help me clean up some of these forms. Let's see. Let's make sure we are dividing up the triceps here. I think I'm missing a little bit of resolution now. But that's fine. We can take care of that. You know, you can see like how this is coming in, and this needs to go out a little bit more to kind of shape this whole mass of the arm, and then the triceps need to come in a little bit more. So because the arms are the triceps it's flexed, right? So the arms is extended. You know, we need to kind of give the triceps here the actual volume of being compressed and pulling, stretching this arm out. It's fully activated. So let's see from a different angle here. Yeah, it's actually not. In this angle here, the volume is all here, but it's not really like fully flexed, I guess. So it's in a more relaxed state. So, but the volume is definitely up here. So let's just clean it up a little bit. You know, building some of these volumes, but continually cleaning things up. This whole movement of the shoulder, I think this is pushed in a little bit more, so I'm just gonna pull this out. This whole volume here, I think it's a little bit too inside of the mass, so yeah, there you go. That feels a little bit better. And let's just get that square angle here. The tricky part about doing a lot of these studies is really being able to pay attention to all of these different things, you know, like that square angle, the interlocking of some of these forms that are maybe not very obvious. So that's why simplification and looking at how other artists exaggerate some of these things, I think it's a key component to be able to translate. You know, that's why a lot of people, including myself, really like Bridgman and some of these other artists, because they really had a good way of explaining, visually explaining uh, a lot of these different structures. All right, so this is feeling a little bit better. Let's see. I'm gonna get a little bit more of this volume here. There you go. So you can see like this outside curve. It goes in, it goes out, and then let's just see here. And then it goes into the forearm. And again, I can't really match that one-to-one because my pose, my angles are not 100% identical, right? And that's not even the goal again. But let's just indicate, because this skin is pulling down here, it's kind of getting, and then going on top of the anatomy, the muscles, but also thinking about the skin and the fat and then the bone structure. So I'm indicating some of this here. Let's see. I'm just gonna push this out a little bit more and we can kind of deal with that later. And this feels right. All right, that feels a little bit better. Not going crazy about all of these things here. I'm just kind of let's look at this shoulder girdle here. Just want to define some of these structures a little bit more. You can get this frontal head, the anterior head popping a little bit more, and then this angle here. This angle here. You can see how I navigate between anatomy and shape. Yeah, this sort of edge here, I think it's very important for this pose. All right. That's cool. That gives a whole sense of volume to the shoulder. And I know I got quiet. I guess my energy is, I think I'm focusing too much, having too much fun, breaking that a little bit. All right, not too bad. Let's just do another pass on the other arm real quick. Or maybe let's just kind of maybe work a little bit more on this torso and maybe we can kind of get to a more final state here. Let's see the chat. Forgot about the chat. All right. Just join the community. Right on. Thank you. I've done a lot of marmoset rendering previously, but usually these days I mainly render in Arnold or Unreal. Sometimes I play with Blender. I don't understand what painting stuff, how in a 2D plane can you make something 3D. I know it's about shading lights and shadows. It's illusion of form, right? So I think it really goes back into the very basic concepts of the illusion of form and manipulating 2D shapes and concepts like edge, line, and form, I guess, or volume. all of these three elements together, and value, right? Like all of these elements together, you can manipulate these elements into a way that if you just look at a render of a sphere, for example, that's probably the easiest exercise that you can do. Thanks, Christoph. Appreciate it, man. This is a lot of fun for sure. That's the part that I enjoy the most, doing these secondary forms, like cleaning up things and finding interesting areas, having fun. If you could name one artwork, movie, game that made the biggest impact in your life and you got inclined to pursue this career, what would it be? I think, well, that's tricky because I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Definitely, yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. Let me think about that one. Sometimes I think everyone at the industry appears to have the same reference overall, kind of neoclassic plus Occidental illustration. How do you break from common sense? Do you see some contemporary sculpt? I do, yes. I agree with you. I like looking at many different references for that specific reason, just to kind of break away from the mold and see if I can find uh, different sort of reference points for different conversations and different yeah, for my own work as well and for my own personal library. You guys do a lot of scans in video games nowadays? Yes, definitely. Scans can be used as references, scans can be used as starting points, and it can also be used as means to an end. How is this process of using them? You improve the model to make it more interesting for the screens? Yeah, like I said, like depends on the game and depends on the project. Uh, this is being used for a very long time, by the way. This is not like something new. Uh, but basically, it can be used as a reference. It can be used as a starting point for a model. It can be used as the actual raw shapes of the model. If we are doing like a digidouble, for example, uh, like Callisto, for example, we scan, Josh, and we ended up building a model that resembles him very closely. So for that, we rely on the scans quite a lot. Um, but it really depends on the project. Really depends on the project, and but like I said, it can be used as reference or uh, or the actual model itself. But there's always stuff that happens on top. Even for digidoubles, it's not like you scan and then you put that in the game. Like that doesn't look good when you do that. So there's a lot of manual work, artistic work, selective work that goes on top of all of these things. All right, let me just kind of. Are you planning a mentorship course apart from these live streams? Are you also using ZBrush for iPad professionally or just practice? I have not used ZBrush for iPad professionally yet, but I don't see why that wouldn't be an issue. Like you can basically, let me see here. So I don't have it here set up, or I forgot where it is actually. Okay, there you go. Go Z to iPad. So basically, if I click here, no device found because my iPad is not here. But if I turn on my iPad, I can send this to the iPad, and I can send back and forth, and it takes like, it's transferring via Wi-Fi, and it's very very fast. So uh, uh, the other day I was working on a model on the iPad, and then I just click and I finish the model here on the computer. So I don't see why I wouldn't use that professionally. Like just haven't used. In all reality, I haven't been sculpting a lot at work these days. I'm mainly, helping the team and doing more, direction type of work. But sometimes I do, get a finger there to sculpt and to kind of manipulate or to design or to help with. But I haven't been, doing a ton of sculpting at work. So, but yeah, but no limitations, I guess. That would be just a matter of, doing it, I guess. Yeah, there you go. So that's, I don't like how some of these edges are very sharp all across. So I will clean some of that up a little bit more. This is also not like 100% accurate, but like I said, in this case here today, I don't care too much. I just want to build something that feels natural and looks interesting. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I like the movement of this arm is not very obvious. You know how this arm is getting rotating out. It's not a very common pose for the arms to be. I just want to make sure I'm capturing, this stretch here. So let's just kind of stretch it out a little bit more. Whenever I want to indicate something very clearly, what I tend to do is, I either do with the dam standard or I cut or I do negatively, like just cutting like this, right? I definitely want to make sure like the pectoral is going on top of the biceps here, right? Like it's connecting here. So whenever I do this, I either do drawing or I do with positive mass, or, I go like, okay, this is what I need to worry about. This is what I need to do. And then, I rework some of these shapes. Like I want to make sure I'm, not noodling things too much if things are already wrong. So I force things to be in the right place first, and then I start noodling, if that makes sense. Cleaning up some of these shapes, making sure it's getting a good read, and now we can start cleaning up and working at some of this anatomy a little bit more. Like I said, this is not a very, you can see like it looks like the biceps is pointing this way, but the biceps actually connect here. So I definitely want to make sure this is actually going in. So that's when some of this anatomy knowledge starts to make sense a little bit more. Also, I don't want the biceps to go this way. The biceps needs to go this way here. So I want to bring the biceps in. And we don't have specific references for this angle here, right? Like I don't see a lot of that in my model. And I think that's the biggest difference between drawing and sculpting for this sort of exercises. Drawing, basically, I'm, reconstructing, analyzing, whatever, like all of that jazz, but like I'm basically looking at a specific angle. And here, when you're sculpting, when you are doing this type of exercise, it makes you think about other things that you may not think when you're drawing, in the same way that drawing forces you to think about different elements that all of us that are sculptors really benefit from learning. So, one thing complements the other for sure. But a lot of like things like this, for example, like, like remember like this wedge shape here, for example, I only started paying attention to some of these things after I started drawing. Like before, it was very hard for me to notice, because drawing forces you to really think about selectively edges and like shapes and silhouettes and all of those things. I think my visual perception, it's much more accurate, and I tend to pay attention to uh, many other different things when I'm sculpting or drawing or designing, or I'm training my eyes to pay attention and my brain to pay attention to other things, I guess. All right, this is much better. Um, This shoulder here, though, I think it's probably a little bit too low, so maybe we just bring it up a little bit. And because I brought it up, maybe we need to carve this a little bit more to give a little more space for the clavicle here. What do you guys like sculpting the most? What is your favorite part of the human body to sculpt? Or to draw, or to paint, or to study? I think mine is probably the torso and the face. I do like the hands as well, but I think I've done mostly torso studies. I don't know. There's something about the torso that it's very expressive. Well, the hands are as well, but I just like the interlocking type of shapes that we get here. Oh, sorry, Johnny. You also asked if I'm planning mentorship courses apart from this live stream. Yes, I said in the beginning of the live, I do have a lot of plans for everything you mentioned and more for next year. So I will share once I have more things planned. But yeah, I wanna be able to do something that feels a little bit different than the stuff that I've done in the past, and I don't know. So yeah, let me plan that out a little bit more, so I can bring that information to you guys. Do you ever double check your measurements from bone landmarks to bone landmarks somehow, or are you just relying on your trained eye? So I do check a lot of that, Chris. I do a lot of like comparative measurement, and I tend to do that more in the beginning. And in this stage here, I think I go more for feel, if that makes sense. But if I start feeling that something looks off or doesn't feel right, and then I will check and I will measure. Um, I guess that is true at all times, right? Like everybody probably does that to some extent. But I don't construct. I guess that is not true. Well, I don't. I guess some people measure more and some people measure less. I think I tend to measure less. And and to be honest, in all of my paintings that I've been doing recently, I think that is biting me a little bit, because some of my drawing most of the time is suffering from me not drawing and just going to the whole feeling thing, and then I stop thinking about some of the proportions in the drawing. So so I guess I do a little bit of both, and I need to do more of both. But right now I'm just going if I feel right. Like I'm not really concerned if this is a full likeness or fully accurate or whatever. Like if this feels right, then I'm fine. Uh, and then I can see like the differences, right? Like this is not identical to the reference. When I said like this shoulder needs to go up a little bit more, it was just the relationship of the size of the shoulder with the whole rest of the arm. But I'm basically saying what you did, right? Like I'm looking at this area to this area here, and then if we were to compare to the rib cage to here, for example, right? Like they are somewhat, maybe not 100% perfect. Maybe this arm is actually a little bit too long now that I move this up a little bit. But I go a little bit more by feel, but I have nothing against measuring, and I do measure depending on the moment. I think we all do, right? Like even if you are just relying on our eyes, we are still doing some sort of like mental measurement. Yeah, I like how some of these forms are very natural, just like organically. We just arrive here without going too crazy. Um, all right. Neck, collarbone area, and hips. That's interesting. Face and hands for sure. I like scope hand and face. Feet. That's cool. Knees and elbows. Torso, face. You have a favorite type of form, character to sculpt, like a creatures, human, cartoon? Definitely creatures and humans. Cartoon is something that I started exploring uh, in more recent years, but it's definitely something that I've more new to it. But I'm mainly interested in cartoons just on the different ways to idealize form or to play with uh, design and shape language and all of those things. But I'm definitely not good at it. But I do enjoy and I do have fun, playing with some of those things. Uh, Torso, triceps, female chest, and torso, arms, legs. Do you pretend to do arts challenge with different teams for next lives or something? So that's a good one. I mentioned this in the beginning too. So basically, for next year, I will do a 3 months challenge of. I guess you probably mean a different thing, right? Like like more of like what people are doing on YouTube. I guess like different challenges and maybe different you know teams, and then I can try to scope that live. Maybe I'll do that in that format. I don't know, but what I want to do for next year is just for all of us, like the community type of thing that we can all scope together. So basically, I want to do a pick a team every week, and then for 3 months, basically 12 weeks, we're gonna all sculpt the same thing or sketch something, or it's just so we can all kind of work together and study together and participate together, that sort of thing. So that's probably starting in beginning of January next year. Uh, and I will share more on the format, and I'm still trying to see what is the best venue for announcing that thing. For now, just stay tuned on Instagram. It's probably my best way to communicate with folks as YouTube starts to ramp up here more and more. I do like YouTube a lot, honestly. I think in the long run, it's probably the platform I want to invest more. Um, I think it's less. It's a little bit more sustainable in the long run and less prone to disappearing, as I could see, Instagram, Twitter, X, all of those platforms eventually kind of dying out because there's always a new one. I feel like YouTube is probably one of those things that will stay strong. I also consume a lot of YouTube, so I guess I'm more familiar with the format and with the type of content that we have here, and I do enjoy that much more too. I watched a lot of artists making art and different people making different things. Here I don't have. I rarely watch like Netflix. I'm always on YouTube, so that's another reason why I think I want to invest a little bit more on this platform here in the long run. Also, this whole idea that we can live stream and we can talk, things are recorded and we can watch those later. um, the reach, all of those things feels pretty nice. I see a lot of fine artists now using YouTube to kind of share their work, share their process. That is awesome. It's becoming like a really medium for lots of different folks, different areas. Here I'm kind of going over a little bit more of the apps, defining things a little bit more, but still maintaining that sort of organic feeling, breaking, making sure everything it's not really just not just drawing. Uh, Again, if I just draw stuff, it won't look natural. Uh, Another thing that I want to do for next year is to uh, go back and maybe possibly do anatomy studies volume 2, and to share with you guys. Eventually I will actually want to print that book as a physical book. I just think the one that I did, version 1, I think it's only, I don't know if it's 60 or 80 pages. I think it's not enough to have that on a printed book. Maybe it is. What do you guys think? uh, should I print that? uh, Let me know in the comments below. It's just so weird to be saying these things out loud, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I should print that. Maybe I should. uh, I know that for a fact, like once I have more, I will probably print it out, like more like a solid book. Not sure if it's just, too not too much stuff, but yeah. All right, so just kind of cleaning up some of these things. This is feeling okay. It's not identical to the reference, but let me just kind of maybe carve out some of these shapes. And again, just going for a more natural look rather than perfection. Or let's see. You like to play games for relax your mind or to inspire yourself with 3D, like Dark Souls? Like, yeah, I do. I don't play a lot of games, but I do play games. No, the game that I played the most for my life, I think it was probably Bloodborne. I think I have maybe like 300 hours in that game. Uh, Beginning of the year, I was playing a lot of Counter Strike with some friends. I play some FIFA with my kids and with friends too. Uh, I play most of the games that come out, like just to kind of see what they're doing, how they look. All of the classics. Last of Us, I love that game. The games that I worked on, I also, play them. Um, yeah, but I don't have the habit of playing a ton of games, right? Like I play more for research or whenever I feel like bored or whenever something comes out. But I tend to consume more either art related things or non art related stuff. Like, you know, I was in triathlon a lot the past couple of years, so triathlon stuff or, you know, non related art things. I like a lot of astronomy as well, so I listen to a lot of podcasts on that. You know, many different subjects. All right, so this is looking okay. I like how some of this movement is feeling. I'm just gonna clean it up. I think this is getting a little bit lost here. Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. I want to get a little bit more of a plane here to kind of help me with this. Yeah, more like that. That's better. What I want to do next is, let's see, we have like maybe like 15 minutes left. Maybe I will Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna start the head, but maybe I will uh, clean up some of these areas. I don't even want to do the head right now. Maybe I can just clean up some of this back and just call it a day. Let's see. Uh, oh, cool. Hey, Quincy, thanks, man. Thanks, Christoph. That means a lot. Appreciate it. Uh, yeah, the whole hard and soft edge thing, it was, I never really thought about that too much. It was mostly just thinking about the forms. But now that I'm in this painting journey, a lot of that has been much more uh, thought out while sculpting. So I'm definitely paying attention into my edges, into my line. So I appreciate you saying that. Um, it's cool to hear that. Um, oh, thanks, guys. Thanks. Looks like it would be cool to print this out. Yeah. Do you paint? Yes. Drawing helps to improve in sculpture. 100%. I only got into drawing and painting maybe, a couple years ago. I've been doing this for 18, 19 years now. Uh, I never I was never classically trained or anything like that, so I never gone to art school. But I took a bunch of classes, and I'm still taking classes. But I only got into drawing and painting for real maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I've been trying to learn how to paint for the past 2 3 years. But recently, this year, I picked up in the beginning of the year, like for real, oils, and I've been doing almost studies almost daily, like at least weekly. I've been doing a lot of them. If you follow me on Instagram, you can actually follow the process that I do, mostly on the stories. But uh, my 3D art and my sculpture and my sense of design and my sense of shape, language, my appreciation for art has improved or changed. Maybe I should say changed. It has improved drastically. Like, it's crazy how much more I see now. And even the I'm blanking. Even my vocabulary to describe what I'm thinking or what I'm seeing has changed as well. Like, so much. I feel like I have so much more uh so much more, I guess, ideas or things to pay attention, or um I have so much more, yeah, concepts, right? Like the whole idea of concepts to appreciate or to discuss or to debate with myself. And I'm someone that really likes to think a lot and to discuss and to dissect, and the whys and what makes an interesting piece and all of that, right? So uh, I think a lot of these things are very, very hard to understand when you are just sculpting, because like the concept of hard edge, lost edge, soft edge, like values, a lot of those things are not very obvious, I guess, when you are sculpting, because they are, even like the shape of the shadows, all that, like they are byproducts of the forms that you are touching and of the light. But they are fully related to relatable or fully connected, because ultimately when you're drawing, you are uh, creating illusions of forms as well, for the most part, right? So yeah, I think it drastically improved my sensibility and my whole journey into the arts. And I would say like the last couple of years, the last 3 years, I spent much more time drawing and painting than actually sculpting. And every time I pick back sculpting, it feels like I improved so much without doing a lot of sculpting. Uh, that being said, if you want to be a sculptor, the majority of your time should be spent sculpting. Like, don't fall into the trap of, okay, so then I'm just gonna be drawing and painting. I'm not gonna be sculpting, and that can help you in the long run. And obviously, you should be doing that, as I'm stating here. But don't think that not sculpting will make you good as as a sculptor. Like, you need to sculpt. They are different mediums, different approach, different techniques, like different subjects, different uh, uh different you know tricks. I would say things respond differently. In the same way, if you want to be a digital sculptor, it is obviously good to sculpt traditionally, but it's a different language, it's a different medium. So it's important for you to also sculpt digitally, right? Because ultimately you need to do that. Um, yeah, so I think we are coming to an end here today. I'm quite happy with how much progress we got. Let me just do some final cleanup here in the front, and then we can call it a night. Uh, oh, that's great, Lucas. So the game podcast that I suggested the other day was a podcast called Gamecraft. It's about the video game industry, and I fully recommend to everyone that it's interested in understanding a little bit more about how the industry started from a very triple A perspective. So it very recommended. Really, really good. Really well put together. The guys that are talking, they are legit. It's not like a random opinion. It's from someone that actually lived this industry when it was starting out, and it was there when things were happening. So it's really, really cool, and talks about the beginning of a lot of companies, the beginning of, and you start to understand a lot of the whys things are, how they are right now, and really cool. Glad you liked it. I actually recommended that to somebody else earlier today as well. Uh, all right, so let me just kind of sharpen up some of these, bring a little bit more contrast to some of these things. Now I'm gonna go a little bit into design land here. Like, I don't know if I really wanna, just kind of copy 100% what I see. I may be able to, design some of these things here so they feel a little bit more interesting. Thinking about some of these shapes here. Sternum here. This guy, this muscle here, which we all know, it's called sternocleidomastoid, right? We all knew that. It connects the sternum to the mastoid, which is the little bone that we have on the back of our heads. So, it connects here, the sternum. Yeah, just indicating a little bit of that. Let's just kind of go over some of these movements here. I always want to make sure movement is part of my pieces. And kind of soften some of these things, not equally. Let's see, let's just break some of these shapes a little bit more. Define some of these planes. And all of these are also, languages that you need to learn how to manipulate and to kind of learn what makes things interesting, that pleases you. And this is where you can spend a lot of time, like just noodling stuff, bringing things to completion. I was just gonna go back to my purple friend. Let's just kind of zoom out. Yeah, this starts to look nice. Again, putting things into perspective, it's very easy to just kind of get lost into these little details here. Yeah, there you go. Just adding a little bit of more bumps here, emphasizing some of these striations. Yeah, there you go. There we go. Let's see. Getting to the finish line here. All right. This is probably good. Yeah. Yeah. It's getting there. I think this is missing a little bit of resolution, actually, to be able to really kind of define. The mesh needs a little bit more resolution. Let me just kind of reshape to kind of make sure I can continue with the movement here, because it can get lost. Just kind of break this symmetry here a little bit. There you go. I think this is good. This is good. All right. Let's just check against other materials. This one is like one of my favorite materials too. And this is I forgot who built this one. It's called AL. And then this is a modification that I did based on that. This is one that I did all of my anatomy studies for the book. So basically this is how I was rendering everything, just this basic material, a quick render. Some of these other materials are nice. They help with reading some of the forms. Let me see. I don't think I have any more materials here. Let's just kind of look at this basic gray. But ultimately, I usually spend most of my time just on this white one, because it feels like this is the one that gives me the best sort of predictable results, if you will. And I think that's it for today. I think we are, just for presentation's sake, let me just save this real quick. Presentation wise, let's just try something together here real quick. Let's just fill this guy white, and let's just do, kind of indicating, hey, we didn't work in these areas here. Uh, let's see if that looks cool. It's kind of a somewhat of a presentation thing. Let's see if that works nice. Because then I don't want to just hide everything, right? Because I still want somewhat maintain everything that we built, but let's see how this works. So if you just can kind of remove this from the viewer. So basically, hey, you know, I'm working on this area here. Yeah, that looks nice. Let's see. Yeah, this is not fully accurate, like I said, but I like the movement. I like this back a lot. That was fun. That was fun. Thanks, guys, for. Let me just see if there are any more comments on the chat here, real quick. And I guess I can go back. How do you like, guys, like this blue screen? The blue light. You see, all professional, all professional. Getting a little bit better. Cool. Let me just see the chat real quick. You remember your first 3D project? I'm not sure if it was my first, but I did a Ankle Scrooge McDonald just jumping on a pool of coins. That's very, very old in 3D Max. How do you usually set up your lights, and at what scale do you usually work, please? I usually work at life size, real life scale. Not in ZBrush though. Like in ZBrush, I really don't care much. But if I'm doing production stuff or work that needs to be rendered, I tend to work at real size for the most part. Would you recommend doing drawing over 3D sculpting since drawing takes years and then move to 3D sculpting to get into the game industry? Is it more efficient that way? I'm not sure. Drawing on top of 3D sculptures, like if you mean in the sense of like doing painting, like concept art or whatever, like using 3D to speed up your painting process because now you get a sense of the basic shadow structure and all of that. It is a very meaningful way to speed up your paintings, and obviously anything you do will help you, right? Like, so with that in mind, what I take from drawing and painting and all of the learnings that I've been doing throughout the years, it's much more on shape recognition, shape design, shadow patterns, edge, value, color, silhouette, all of like composition, all of these concepts. And a lot of those things, a lot of these things are already distilled once you have a 3D model that you can paint on top, right? So I'm not saying that like I said, everything you do is going to be fine. Is going to help you out, but I would prefer to not skip the process of purely drawing and painting without the support of 3D, at least for studying. But I can, like I said, to become a 3D artist, to become a sculptor, it's not a necessity. It's something that would help you out. And the way I did, I spent most of my time sculpting, and then eventually I got into drawing, and I think my art is getting better and better. And a lot of people that I know that are sculptors or digital artists or even in the character artists for the industry, they don't even draw at all. So it is not a requirement, but it's something that will definitely help you out in the long run. Yeah, cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you. uh, thanks all. Appreciate all of the comments, all of you chiming in. That means a lot. Like I said, another video dropping on Monday is going to be about primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. So that one is already done. So hopefully that helps, and really trying to share and to spread the love. So take care, everybody. Catch you guys on the next one. Next Wednesday, 6 p.m. PST. We're going to be here again. Maybe doing a creature this time, or maybe doing something else, or continue this one. We'll see. Let me know what you guys want to see. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Sorry, I'm learning how to do all of these things. Anyways, cheers, guys. Take it easy.